Hello, everyone. Welcome back. For those of you I haven't yet met, I'm Enda, COO and co-founder here at Sequence. I'm very excited to have you all here at our first annual summit, which, based on the initial feedback, I think will definitely make an annual recurring theme because it's really exciting to see a room full of the smartest people in finance and RevOps from the leading AI and SaaS companies here in one room. So, really excited. The next panel is a topic we think a lot about at Sequence. A lot of the companies that we work with, there's typically two main scaling motions that we see. You start PLG, you gradually move up market in enterprise sales-led deals, or you're sales-led from day one. And as you scale, you start to layer in a self-serve PLG motion. What a lot of teams underestimate is the operational complexity of actually managing those pricing motions in tandem. Not only in terms of actually managing the upgrade process when a team moves from being entirely self-serve to sales-led, but in terms of the actual revenue tooling that you need to scale a PLG motion versus a sales-led motion. A good example of this is, over 50% of our revenue here at Sequence actually comes from Stripe billing migrations because it's an easy starting point for a lot of PLG teams who use Stripe as a payments gateway. They add on Stripe billing. It works well in the PLG space, and we have a ton of admiration for Stripe as a payments gateway and as a PLG platform. But as teams move up market, as they move into sales-led deals, they quickly break the limitations of what something like Stripe billing can do. And it's the same for other legacy tools like ChargeBee, Maxio, who are built for more of the V1 subscription SaaS era. This is where I think we're really excited at Sequence to be able to work with a lot of companies who have dual pricing motions, and I'm very pumped to welcome 4 panelists who have experience scaling both pricing motions. And we're going to hear from teams who have started PLG and gone up market into the sales-led world, and on the flip side, teams who are currently fully sales-led, preparing for the shift to PLG. So with that, would love to welcome up our 4 panelists and jump straight into the discussion.
Hi, everyone. I'm MG Thibaut. I'm the founder of a CFO community called Coterie CFO, where I bring groups of finance leaders together with companies that are building products for the CFO tech stack. And there are definitely a few folks in the room that I've had the pleasure of working with. And I'm also the CFO exec in residence at Scale Ventures. So could not be more excited to be having this conversation with you all. We were going to start with a question for Steve around Clay. So Clay has been absolutely one of the breakout AI stories of the past couple of years. And so we'd just love to hear a little bit about, from your perspective on, like, with growth kind of at that rapid pace, kind of talk to me a little bit about what's happening with your pricing strategy and who do you get at the table? Is finance part of that conversation? And how is that playing out?
I think it takes a village to kind of like really get the pricing right. It starts kind of with the product team and they're kind of building out the product, but like, I think as you kind of scale and grow, it really becomes about data and having the right data to have insights to pull the right levers on pricing. So building a data science team, making sure you have the right people there, and really kind of defining the metrics you want to look at to continue scaling. From there, you're going to have the finance team jump in, start modeling it out. You're going to start modeling, you're thinking about different things. After that, you're going to have the product team way back in and really kind of come back in and say, hey, what are the customers saying? And this is where finance and product will continue chatting with customers, really try to understand what is the feedback on your current pricing model. And then finally, you're going to have your like marketing and sales team, right? This is where like marketing's going to come in, sales is going to come in, and they're going to be like, okay, well, how is everyone to react? How do we want to message this? And essentially, how do we want to tell our customers who are already customers the new pricing model, right? And this comes with a little bit of a grandfathering in and making sure that you're communicating that, hey, we may hold this pricing constant for you for 1 year, but then after that, we have to move to the next model.
That's great. Any like signals or data that you're looking at to indicate, outside of maybe some griping from customers, on sort of what's working and what's not?
I think for Clay, we get a lot of like, our pricing is very expensive. And so we kind of have a 2-tier model where we have like credits, right, that we give on a % basis. But then we actually, in the platform, we price per credit per action, right? So we actually have data around every action. And we go, hey, if this was 3 cents, we raise it to 5 cents. Does the usage drop or increase? And so we use that as more of a kind of signal to how to change our pricing. So that's more of the consistent changes versus like the overall external facing pricing changes.
Well, cool. Well, Kai, why don't we turn it over to you, which is, and we're starting to see themes emerge with companies where they're tying payment of commissions actually to like real revenue received or actual payment received. And just would love to hear your thoughts on milestone-based comp and, how do you sort of think about that and balance continue to keep the sales team motivated to close deals?
I have so many thoughts on comp. Okay, first and foremost, like bridging the gap. For me, like finance, shout out to all of you guys. You guys have a super hard job, and we love you guys from a go-to-market point of view. So Yvonne back there, who's taking a picture right now, he and I were the best of friends at Webflow. He leading the finance team, me leading the sales side. Like that interlock is so, so critical. So he and I text every day while we were at Webflow, and he helped me change the fiscal year, which is awesome for go-to-market, maybe not so awesome for the finance and accounting team. So super important. I really, really cherish our relationship with finance. As far as comp, I don't have like this simple framework for all of you. Sadly, it is like a first principles idea. So it really depends on your type of company. So if you're like a seed Series A company, you probably care about cash. So you probably want to incentivize like 3-year deals, pay up front, and you probably want that. If you're a PLG company, sometimes you don't actually want your salespeople that involved after the sale because you don't want the salespeople to actually like cover up what's wrong with the product. And so you kind of want the product team to actually have all the signals of like, hey, what is broken here? And ensure that they're prioritizing those fixes. If you're like a later stage company that has high gross margins, like a SaaS company, like a Series C company, probably just want to ensure like comp gets paid. It's simple, easy to understand, easy to scale, easy to explain to a field. So you're not like, maybe pestering is not the right word, but like getting questions from the sales team about how their comp plan works. I do think in this AI world, comp is quite important to think about. So gross margins are quite different in AI versus SaaS. And so my company, Together AI, we do a whole AI native cloud, meaning that companies can come to us. We have our own GPUs. They can pre-train their models with us. They can do fine-tune open source models. They can do inferencing. And our gross margins are quite different than a SaaS company. So our gross margins are anywhere between 35 to 45%. And these deals can be quite large. So for us, one of the most important things is that we have a really tight deal desk process. But then two, that we really start to educate our field around like how these gross margins things work, which then impact their sales commissions. So at the end of the day, it's really like a first principles type of idea and really what type of company you are and what you want to accomplish and what stage you're in.
And so just brass tacks, like with current compensation at Together AI, are you paying at the time of deal closure or are there kind of milestones associated with your comp plan?
So we pay at deal closure, but we do clawbacks. So certainly if we don't get paid, then the AE knows that. We also do quite large transactions too. So this can be anywhere between $5 to a few $100 million transactions, which you want to be quite careful. And so we also have a pretty thorough diligence with the end customer to ensure that they can actually pay. We also are quite thoughtful about how much they pay up front and then monthly payment after. So this is all built into the comp plan of the AEs. But I wouldn't necessarily do the same thing at a SaaS company.
And what was some of the infrastructure around how the comp plan was developed? Like, was there a lot of heavy analytics behind it?
So
Or teams, I guess.
so our RevOps leader works hand in hand with our finance team to structure these. Like our AEs are quite productive. And what I mean by that is our AEs are able to have like $25 million quotas a quarter. But then we're certainly not going to pay that much. And so we have to be quite thoughtful about how we ramp and accelerate. And also sometimes we also have like a large deal bonus for our AEs, but we have to do that hand in hand with the finance team. As we scale, I'm sure our finance team is going to continue to turn the knobs, and that's totally fine. But we're at a space right now that's really like a land grab, especially in this AI infrastructure world. And it's quite important for us that our AEs are just pounding the pavement even after they've hit their quota all quarter long.
Josh, let's talk about Sardine. So, thinking about the Sardine's model, there's definitely a high usage product mix, right? And selling into enterprise customers. And so kind of would love to hear from your perspective. Like certainly you want sales to be able to stay flexible and be able to win deals, but finance on the other hand kind of needs that clean outputs after the deal is closed. And, can you talk a little bit from, your perspective and on the RevOps side, like How do you balance that tension, and how do you kind of keep the whole system running and scalable?
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot. How to keep it all running and scalable, that's definitely a big challenge. I would say a couple things that we've done at Sardine over the last 3 years. It's about a 4-year-old company now. The first being not so tactical, but building on what Kai said, organizational. From the beginning, had RevOps roll up to finance. And that has built a culture of like mutual enablement. I think like we think about where to invest our money in projects that are helping both sides, I guess you'd say. Since we're so aligned, our finance leadership is amazing and never complains about the problems, but really we think about a big chunk of finance job is to enable our sales team. An example of that was like up until about a year ago, we were selling a lot of data in a different way than our underlying vendors charged us. And that was causing like a lot of frustration on deal desk. Salespeople were frustrated. They'd have to come, like, we'd do all the margin calculations and tell them, hey, like that structure is like, it's not going to work, because finance did really care about our margins. Or a good chunk of our revenue is reselling data packages. So our finance team really like took the effort to help repackage and reprice some of those core products so that our sales team know what their guardrails were and know where they could flex without having to come back to sales for approval. And so that was an example of like the tight partnership gave our sales team the ability to move much quicker and faster in deals. And so that was the first thing, like organizationally. I would say the second thing that has made a really big difference for us, I think, I don't know where we would be without this, is just a heavy investment in usage-based or like a billing system. Pretty much all of our revenue is usage based. So either way, we're a financial risk intelligence platform for financial services. So a lot of geo-specific regulation and a lot of different financial use cases where people come and want to get risk intelligence about certain types of transactions they're doing. So it's a very broad customer need. And from day one, we had a lot of different customers asking for a lot of different ways to consume our product and pay for our product. So we built an in-house system. We decided to build an in-house system about 3.5 years ago. And that has given us a lot of flexibility to take on all different types of deal structures. I would say that there's been a couple things in that journey that have felt like major game changers. So for example, when we decided to spend a significant number of resources and time to build in like prepaid credit entitlements into our billing platform and be able to do all the rev rec, it like totally unlocked our sales team. Then had to stop there. They were able to stop like negotiating on unit prices with customers who didn't exactly know how they were going to use our platform to being, hey, like you can use our platform any way you want, like make a small commitment and you can like basically use this risk intelligence platform across your company however you see fit. And that just like greased the wheels a lot. But I know that we didn't have our CFO at the time. I was the one who was like, okay, let's do this. I was also like, holy crap, like how is this going to work? But it totally enabled the sales team. And so I would say on the flip side, building an in-house billing system like that really is the bridge between sales and finance is very challenging. Pretty much always, we could never get the resources to do like that much more than keep the lights on. And we definitely lost a lot of deals in the process where sales were like, hey, they want to do this. And I'm like, well, it's probably going to be 3 months or 6 months before we can do that. And that would slow negotiations down. And in the early days, we definitely lost deals. So going back to like 3 years ago, if I could really make that decision, I would invest, or not even invest. It would be much more cost effective for me to get onto a platform like Sequence or any of the others that provide all the capabilities to price all the different ways that we do now from the beginning than to have gone through the pain of losing deals. And also like I could just enable our sales team from day one. Like when I started researching Sequence and other usage-based billing platforms, that like part of it, I was like ashamed that I just spent 3 years building this. But I was also like, it was giving me ideas. I'm like, oh wow, yeah, I didn't even think about pricing like this. Like jumping onto a platform like this, like I could pretty much always say yes to a salesperson, which feels great, right?
Great.
Yeah.
That is amazing. I mean, do you find that there are guardrails that you sort of need to have in place and that the system sort of is enabling that? Or is there just so much more flexibility available at this point?
I think, like the guardrails can live at different components of the whole, like, sales to like contract to collecting revenue. I think one thing that for Sequence specifically that was interesting for me, and then I felt differentiated between all the others that I researched. I mean, I researched all the usage-based billing platforms, was that we still don't have any CPQ software. And I'm really reluctant to integrate a usage-based billing platform and CPQ, and we're making a decision to switch ERPs right now. Sequence really stood out as giving me like some pretty foundational ways to prevent salespeople from doing things, not like maliciously, but we have a very complicated product and a lot of just accidents happen because we're releasing product really fast. It's hard to explain to a salesperson what exactly it means and and even like in a lot of cases, we don't know. We figure out like what the right pricing or what the guardrail should be after the fact. So not having to rely on an engineer, a billing engineer, to check code out to like put in guardrails or even measure something and have those capabilities in a UI has helped a lot. Like, because now I can recruit like people from the finance team who are fresh out of college to like manage things that never thought they would. And it's helpful for everybody.
That's amazing. That's amazing. We like being able to hire recent college grads because that's a negative headline these days. Well, and that's also a great segue to Patrick. So, everyone's heard stories, right, of salespeople going rogue and selling things that they should not have, which then ultimately, of course, creates all sorts of headaches downstream. So I'd love to hear from you about like how do you think about giving your team room to be flexible and be able to get big deals done, but making sure that things can run smoothly from a finance perspective after signature.
A salesperson would never go rogue and try to close a deal.
Never, never.
I think especially working at like a smaller like Series A, Series B, plays try to get into Series C. Really having like a building of trust cross-functioning between like sales and finance and legal, whoever's involved, is kind of critical to make sure you have like the success of the organization as a whole. I've definitely worked for like smaller companies that, I show up as the first like finance hire. There's no RevOps team, and I'm just kind of looking at things. And you have conversations with every AE at the company, and they're all doing things differently. They're selling a different product, features that don't exist. Just kind of like, hey, we've never been enabled or been told what to sell or how to sell or what the guidelines are to sell. And it's almost like the wild, wild west just to try to get a deal done, which when you're a smaller company and you don't have the power to like go up to a mid-market or enterprise level company and kind of push back, you're just trying to get your name out there. The more I've worked with salespeople, and I'd say it's probably 30 to 40% of my role in the last couple of years, is salespeople actually want guidelines and they want to be kind of told what to do in a way of like, hey, like, just tell me what I can and can't do, so then I know where I can push the envelope and where I can't push the envelope. A salesperson wants to know where that line in the sand is of like, hey, like I know you want that 30 payment terms. If it's over 50K and it's a logo really want, is that flexible? Can we do 60? Can we do 75? I know you want to bill annual up front, but this is a great logo. Can we do monthly payment terms? Like they want to know what ammo they have, so they feel like they can go close a deal without having to go to like Papa Finance every time. Like, hey, I really want to close this deal. Can I just get an extension on payment terms? And I've seen it the other way too, where in my last company, there was someone like every single time it was like a 10K deal. Like, hey, they want to pay monthly at 90 days. And it's like, we're not paying $833 every 90 days. It's just not going to happen.
I've been on the receiving end of those too. I'm like, my team is not creating that $833 invoice every month.
I had one company where we were literally like, I was going back and looking at historicals and someone signed a 3-year deal, paid monthly, and it was like $80 a month. And I'm like, this is more time and effort and money to send out the invoice, send the reminder email because they always paid late, collect the money, enter it into NetSuite, and they do this whole thing. They just like, let's write that contract. Let's just give the product for free at this point.
Exactly.
I don't see what the big deal is, by the way. No, I'm kidding.
And it ties back into the question you had of commissions of obviously a salesperson is going to try to do whatever they can because that's how they're making their living. It's usually like a 50-50 split. I need to earn my commission. And if you have a long sales cycle, a lot of salespeople see finance as a blocker of you're too strict. I can't close deals because there's no flexibility on any terms at all. I've seen controllers or heads of finance try to push it that way where it's like it's almost so black and white that there's no flexibility. No salesperson is going to want to work at that company because like, hey, like I can't close deals because you won't budge on anything, whether it be, hey, we want to be a law in California versus New York or Delaware, like things that probably will never happen. You just have to learn where to give and take. So I think especially with startups is you have to find that middle ground of, yes, protect the company to make sure you can, collect on the annual contract so that you do get paid. Going back to his closed won questions, I've seen it like, oh, you get 100% closed on closed won. I've had CROs push like, how about we pay out 100% on an LOI? Things like that is just like, all right, we got to meet us in the middle where we can protect the company while also giving them the opportunity to grow and do what they do. So coming to a compromise and having an open dialogue is super critical to make sure that finance is happy with what we're doing, protecting the company, helps scaling efficiently. But the sales team is still having the tools that they need and empowering them to go sell. And obviously, at the end of the day, finance teams aren't the one making the company money. It's the salespeople who really help growing that, like, 50, 60, 70 million ARR. I've never seen a valuation from a VC firm of like, oh, your finance team did this. Like, it's always, how fast are we growing?
Don't say that. That's not true. No, just kidding. And so talk to me a little bit about sort of the role that systems might play within that. Kind of what are you leveraging? What do you see as like really interesting? What are the opportunities?
I think it's obviously in the space of AI, like, so try to automate as much as possible. Going back to the commission question, because this is my biggest pain in the ass of all time, of you see a sheet with like 80 people in it and it's this manual calculation and I go click on it and it's hard coded. It's like, how can I confirm that this commission is accurate? He's like, oh, trust me. So having tools like Captivate IQ or Quota Path or any of those in the back end set up, so then salespeople know like how far I'm into my quota, when do I hit accelerators, how's my commission being calculated, having that set up on the front end, having like a CPQ, talking about those guardrails of trust of like having something set up where you can be like, you can give up to an X percentage of discount before you need to get manager approval, and then they can give a certain percentage of discount before you have to bring in finance. Set those things up to make it as clear and concise as possible, having that great CPQ that then flows into either Salesforce or your billing engine. So it's like just this easy, seamless flow of information. Because the best interactions, I think, are when we have to interact at least. Like if you can just close a contract and there's not this back and forth for months and months and months, that's going to help you do your job better. And at the end, I can trust that a contract is signed. I'm not going to get that $83 a month contract for 3 years and it's good to go. So setting up from start to finish the CPQ to the billing engine to a commission tool really helps salespeople, enable them to be better at their jobs.
So I told my deal desk team, I was like, you guys are like the Fed. You guys have a dual mandate, okay?
Did you say the Fed?
The Fed.
Oh, the Fed.
The Fed,
I was
yep.
like, wait, we're fat?
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
The Fed. Dual mandate. One, you have to protect the company, but you also have to ensure like we get this deal done. And that is, a partnership and a dialogue. And to what you were saying earlier, the salespeople want to be able to control the deal as much as possible. So they want to take it as far as possible before having to go to deal desk or having to go through the machinations. But once you get that deal desk process locked and loaded, like things can streamline and move much quicker.
Do you think RevOps should report to finance or sales?
Oh.
Sales.
I strongly disagree.
I second the disagreement.
Tell me more. Why?
I think, well, at least in prior companies, RevOps has typically overseen sales compensation. And so it's a little bit of the fox in the hen house where if the folks that are creating the comp plans their boss is the person for whom they're creating that comp plan, it loses some objectivity. And so I feel like reporting the CFO or even the COO makes the most sense, where you have to have like a hub of completely objective individuals who are driven by quantitative elements. That's where it should report into.
And I agree with that. Like the RevOps team should be Switzerland in its own way of you shouldn't be loyal to finance. You shouldn't be loyal to sales. You really are the neutral party, making sure that you're herding cats. You got to make sure everyone is happy. At my prior company, RevOps reported to sales, and the deals that they're approving or pushing through, or their comp plans are like, oh, you have an unlimited accelerator. That's weird. Your boss is also the person getting quoted on that. So you got to have that like neutrality that like if you do report to sales, it's almost like you're biased towards that.
Okay. So RevOps is much more than comp plans, by the way. So RevOps.
I agree with that.
So RevOps for sure. Comp plans, I think we go hand in hand with finance. At a certain scale, finance should own the comp plan, approve the comp plan, and actually be in charge of all the commissions, which is not fun for anyone. But RevOps does much more, like figuring out market mapping, like understanding where the lead flow, understanding which leads are actually working for the sales team, looking at the pipeline. And so for that to sit under finance feels like I would lose control of that critical piece. Again, comp plans, I think, are just one part of RevOps.
But you're an interesting CRO, right? Because you oversee both sales and marketing. So the other places where I've gone, RevOps go reporting into sales go badly is when there's a CMO in addition to a CRO. And so, things become very siloed. And so that's also why I'm like, yeah, reporting into kind of this like neutral, centralized function helps bridge some of those gaps and kind of create some handholds amongst some of the functions. But we could fight over this.
I think it's worth fighting about.
But I think we're out of time. So, but yeah, any final questions or anything from folks out there?
One thing I thought was really interesting that was brought up about sales reps trying to find that line in the sand or push the envelope. Just curious to hear your opinion on if you want that control at the product level, where it's like a binary, like we can do this, we can't do that, or if you think of it more of like I think the words used were like process or communication amongst the team on what it takes to get the deal done. So no right answer, just curious to hear.
Wait, is your question like, can your salespeople sell what's on the truck versus not?
More like, where do you want the control? Do you want the control baked into the quote, the product that you use to create the quote, or do you want it baked into the process of how do we come to a mutual agreement with the customer?
I think it's both. Like you have to build it into the product that controls it, but you also have to, in order to build that product, you have to have that communication before it's built in. So it's like we can all like have the conversation, and then once you agree to that, then build it in the product. But if you try to build it before you communicate, they're just going to try to circumvent those controls anyway. So it's almost like you need both.
I think it's pretty important to have like a pretty fleshed out product roadmap. And so you will show that to your, prospect or potential renewal. But for certain deals, like that's a discussion, if it's a large deal and highly strategic, I think it's all hands on deck. I do think though the product leaders have to be involved in those conversations. And from a CRO point of view, like I have to understand like the trade-offs I'm making in product. If I'm going to go have the product team go work on this, like I'm totally okay with this thing pushing out 2 quarters and then those other customers being pissed.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you
everybody.
all so much.